What up?
What's up, bro?
How you doing?
I'm good, my guy. How about you?
Not too bad. Tired.
I bet, dude. We live in a busy schedule right now, my friend.
Long days. Short hours after.
Dude, for real. Nah, you're not what do you call that? Burning the midnight oil, so to speak, right? You're not getting too burnt out, are you?
No. Right now, no.
That is good news. I worry about you. Not that you need me to worry about you, but you know what I mean.
I got you. It's always good. Always good on the lookout. Feel it.
I just know you and me. We're both the same. You get focused on what you're doing and you just lock in, and that's all you do.
Yeah. Let's see here.
All right, let me get my camera going. My new little office. Hopefully my audio should be way better today than it's been in a while. Turn down my noise gate or whatever you call that.
Close the gate.
Close the noise gate. Where is it? Input sensitivity. How's that sound? Does that sound all right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, there we go. Okay, now the camera.
Wade moment. I'm showing the highlights right now. It's the one where he took like the half court heave.
Oh yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
I'm sure this is the right one. No, this isn't the right one. There's the one where he like shoots it and then he gets on top of the table and he's just like, "This is my house."
Yep.
Can't remember which year it was. It might have been like his 1 year where he was in contention for the MVP.
Yeah, what was that? 2006, right?
It wasn't 2000. It was like a little bit later. It was like before LeBron came. I think maybe
the year before, 2008. Then.
Yeah, something like that.
LeBron went there 09-010, right? After the 09-010 season.
Yeah. Magic. The floater alert.
I guess I don't keyboard anyway.
Oh, this was it. It was against Chicago, I think. Yep. It was this one.
Chicago.
Forgot how big this game 3 Kevin Durant with the nerf this 3 and then 17 final. Kind of fun watching these old highlights.
Well, I've been because Michelle's getting into basketball this year. She's like diving into it. So every time we play a new team, I take her on like a highlight reel of like whoever the team's best players are. Kind of show them like show her them like their careers. Whoever it is. I mean, like if it's who did we do just recently? Oh my gosh. Why am I forgetting this?
Carmelo?
Not Carmelo. Oh my God. Who was it?
Kenyon Martin.
Oh my God. Kenyon Martin.
Kenyon Martin
Yeah.
Jr. Some great highlights. Great dunk highlights. This is actually, and then we're watching this J.R. Smith bang out. J.R. Smith on the Nuggets was a problem.
Dude, J.R. Smith on the Knicks was a problem too. He had like a couple seasons. I mean, he had some of the best dunks I've ever seen. The Knicks.
I feel like if that team had a little bit of leadership when Carmelo was on that Nuggets team, I think that would have been something different.
Different coach and different, some more veteran leadership. That team would have been so good.
Oh wait, that's what I gotta do. There we go. Show non-video participants. That way my screen doesn't show up when you're talking. Kobe counter.
Kobe.
Oh, this is the 85 point. What's the 88?
Oh, I know who it was. Oh my God, it took me forever to think of it. It was Chris Paul. We played the Suns last week, so we did like a little Chris Paul highlight reel. But we do whoever it is, like whoever the best player on the other team is. I give her like a little rundown.
Jordan. All right, let me just pause the music here. We can get started. I think Brad will probably join us at like 10. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But hopefully everyone is having a great time. Obviously, Pete looking nice in his new setup, looking
What's
professional,
up?
looking professional
sir.
as ever. So
Yeah, we're back on it.
back
Got the
on it.
foam. I got foam on the walls, baby. That's how you know you're starting to put a studio together.
Foam on the walls, good lighting. I mean, this is definitely upgrading on the stream type of quality, and it's thanks to you guys for tuning in every day, whether you're watching the live stream or whether you're watching us do segment videos. It's much appreciated the way that you guys are. Oh, you back?
All right. Whoops.
There you go. Now what happened to the audio quality? I think it dropped a little bit.
Whoops. Yeah, it might have been me. My bad. My thing closed out.
And as you get that fixed, it's thanks to you guys for like helping us out and really trying to reach our goals of getting to that next number and, trying to make this kind of a more than just talking about, I would say like the current topics, like once we get a little bit bigger, once we start, obviously making this more of a revenue thing, that's when we can really start working on building some sort of foundation here on the charge of content that you guys would like, talk about past games, talk about previous games, and obviously, go into the realm of 2K, playing that, doing a more intimate storyline type of thing. Like that's kind of the stuff that I want to do in the near future. Obviously with coaching right now, it makes it really difficult. And also with the job too, there's so many hours you can give in a day, but thanks to you guys for like helping us kind of get through all this stuff. Again, we couldn't have done any of this without you guys. And, we look forward to just continuing to talk about basketball, forward to talking about, other kind of news and rumors, especially as we get closer to NBA drafts with Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, is kind of our big talking point. I know I haven't made our Scoot Henderson video or any of the other the Twins video. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I need to do coming up. Obviously, with the basketball season, like I talked about, makes it a little bit difficult. But obviously, with Pete and Brad helping at the wing, kind of doing what they need to do and whatever they want to do on the channel again. We're here for you guys. And so I just want to kind of say thanks again for tuning in.
Yes, sir.
But with that being said, hopefully you guys are enjoying your Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, wherever you are at right now in the world. We're here to give you the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. As you can tell by the title, We really got to talk about this Kawhi Leonard situation. Obviously, this is becoming now a huge story, I would say, for maybe NBA heads, but for some reason, the media, I feel like, has not the big media that's, the ESPNs, the Fox Sports. They continue to not talk about kind of the elephant in the room with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George always hurt. And so we'll kind of discuss that. We're also going to, like, for me, just kind of topics that I want to talk about too. Sacramento Kings, obviously, I was proven wrong.
Yeah.
More so just talking about like what their chances are in the play-in games or even playoffs since right now because they're sixth place. And then also talking about, let me just double check my notes here. And then talking a little bit about the power rankings, talking about where teams are at currently. Obviously, we're not going to talk about every single team, but just kind of some notable teams on this ESPN power ranking. But before we do that, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all that stuff helps out the channel tremendously, and it's the reason why we do this is for you guys to kind of create a basketball community where we can talk about sports, talk about, well, mostly basketball, but talk about other things in basketball world, like whether it's high school, whether it's college, whether it is professional NBA, European, it doesn't matter what it is. All of us are in love with basketball. We're enamored by it. So we appreciate you guys' help. And remember to continue to help us out with the algorithm, as that does help us go a very long way. What should we start with first, Pete? What story makes sense to start with first? Should we start with the Myles Turner, Sacramento Kings, or the Kawhi Leonard news?
Let's do Kawhi first. Let's get the bummer out of the way.
Okay. So, if you guys don't know, right now we have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George will be sitting out the next two games. It seems like every time we talk about Kawhi Leonard, he seems to have some sort of injury that's new. It seems to be whether it's his foot, his leg, his hip, like no matter what it is, it just continues to be a point of emphasis for me at least, talking about Kawhi Leonard missed the next two games. Per Ty Lue, and this, of course, according to some sources, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George will remain out on Sunday versus Indiana in addition to tonight. This is starting to become an issue because if we look at kind of Kawhi Leonard's stats currently, and if we go to the Basketball Reference and kind of just like what he's been able to play so far, he's only been able to play in 5 games this year. Yeah. And that's a far cry from where he was, 2 or 3 years ago, where he was at least playing 60 games. It seemed like there wasn't that much issue, but now there seems to be some sort of thing that's going on with Kawhi Leonard. And Pete, I don't know about you, but it's starting to become a big concern for me because he was once supposed to be like the best player in the world, someone that a lot of people were saying is better than LeBron James, better than Kevin Durant, better than all these young guys put together, and he just cannot stay healthy. It's starting to become a little bit of a bummer, but it's also something where I feel like he doesn't, these guys, that being Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, I think, let me check when Paul George, how many games he's played as you talk, but this is starting to become a disappointment, right? Like, what's going on? In your opinion, why has it gone the way it has for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George? Besides, I know the injuries, but what do you think it could be?
Well, I think one thing, and I hate to sound like the old guy right off the bat, but I guess that's kind of my go-to role on this podcast at this point. But and you know me, Bernie. I'm a diehard Kawhi fan. I love Kawhi. At one point, I was one of these people that was out there, extolling the successes and virtues of Kawhi Leonard on the basketball court. I mean, this dude was my favorite player for a couple of seasons just because I really did think like he was on track to be that guy in the league. And we saw it. I mean, that Toronto championship run, he was the guy. He was doing everything at the highest level possible. The best defender in the NBA probably at the time, one of the better offensive players in the league. I think what it comes down to, and this is where I'm going to get into my old guy take, I do think, and let me start by saying this first, actually. I do think Kawhi is legitimately still hurt. We talked about this a couple streams ago, but one of the initial reports that came out back when he was still with San Antonio before he ended up getting traded out of San Antonio was the injury that he had in his hamstring was not a normal injury. It was some sort of long-term thing that was kind
Mm-hmm.
of probably never going to go away. This, I think the word I read was like a calcification of something in his hamstring. So something was getting, a little too much. It was getting too tight to the point where it was not even like muscle anymore. It was like calcifying the muscle in his leg, which is, I mean, that sounds terrible, and no wonder the dude can't get on the court, right? But I do think that a lot of his time in the NBA has just been marred by this. And I think that like the longer you allow players to do this, the more it just becomes the natural thing to do for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, if he's hurt, he should do whatever he needs to do to not be hurt, right? But this has been the MO for Kawhi for years now. The
Yeah.
not playing, overly cautious as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wonder, like, is it so much so that he's hurt right now, like really legitimately hurt, or is he just so used to being overly cautious that he's not willing to risk it yet, right?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's one of the biggest questions you have to wonder. Like, and if the Clippers are really trying to do this guy a service, they should get out there and start talking about it. If he's really legitimately hurt,
Mm-hmm.
they got to get out there and talk about it, because we talked about this last stream too, Bernie. This Clippers situation has been a disaster as far as super team construction is concerned.
Yeah.
Probably the end of the super team era. This is one of the poster cases of why
Mm-hmm.
giving everything you have for two superstars probably is not the move with how
Yeah.
deep the league is. The Paul George one is tough, just because I do think, for everything you could say about PG, playoff P, whatever you want to call him, push off P, everything. The dude has really given everything he can to this team for the last two
Yeah.
years, even though he's been injured too, on and off.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not working with a ton, right? But
Yeah.
this team's frustrating, man, because it's the same thing for the last few years. They have a great coach. They have a lot of solid role players. I told you guys before the season started, I thought they might have had the deepest team in the league,
Yeah.
just out of pure abundance of the hardest type of players to get, which is 3-and-D wings. They have tons
Mm-hmm.
of good ones.
Yeah.
But again, I think they're top 3 in defensive efficiency, and they're bottom of the league in offensive efficiency. If I remember correctly, I saw it a couple days ago. I think they were number 3 in offense, or number 4 in offense, in number 30, or excuse me, reverse. Number 2 or 3 in defense, in number 30 in offense, which it's just not going to cut it. But that's what happens when your best scorer is not playing for 2 straight seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty tough.
Yeah. I mean, it is frustrating, and I think you're all right, and you're onto something there in terms of moving a ton of pieces for two superstars. I think that's a thing of the past, like you said,
Yeah.
because if you really like stop and think about the successful teams that are out here right now, teams like the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors, obviously being the poster child for it, the Memphis
Memphis.
Grizzlies,
Yep.
and Denver to some extent before the injuries, the Boston
Yeah,
Celtics,
Denver.
the Boston Celtics right now. I mean, these are teams that play team basketball. These are teams that drafted these guys or maybe signed one superstar that helped him out.
Yeah.
This isn't a team. These aren't teams that gave up the farm and said, "Here, Kawhi." Here, another team like the Brooklyn Nets are another example. Kevin Durant, Kyrie, or like go and
100%.
go and fix it. Go help us out and go win these games. But that's just not the way the league works anymore. Like you can see the empowerment of the role players that the superstars and the coaches are starting to give these guys is tremendous, because you can clearly see that it works. The Golden State Warriors show it. Guys like Kevon Looney, guys like Andrew Wiggins, guys that you would never think in a million years before they joined that team would give you any sort of offense or any sort of uh, consistency on the offensive end, are giving you buckets. Like, especially guys like Andrew Wiggins. I know he kind of plays that Harrison Barnes role from years past, but Harrison Barnes was another example of that. Like a guy that can put the ball in the bucket when Kevin Durant, or sorry, well, before Kevin Durant, but
Yeah.
Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are covered, or they're getting double teamed, and they're getting blitzed, meaning that they're trying to get the ball out of their hands and moving it to the next person. Like those guys are able to take advantage of their mismatches, and that's happening with the Memphis Grizzlies right now. Jaren Jackson Jr. obviously being a good player, John Morant being an amazing player, but now you're seeing the emergence of Desmond Bane as kind
Yeah.
of like this now, I would say, second star on the team. And you can clearly see that sort of ball in terms of the way that they move the rock, the way that they give the guys opportunities to attack, give the opportunities to shoot the ball. That is going to take a team a long way rather than having Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving take 20 shots in a game and think that they're going to win. And I think that's for the better. I think that's for the better. I think it's for the betterment of the league. Yeah, does it suck that we're not going to get those type of like early 2000s basketball anymore? Yeah, in a sense it does, but I think that this new age of basketball just allows the game to flow more free rather than being restricted.
Yeah, I mean, beyond all the little changes they've made this season, not even little changes, the big changes like the take foul stuff. Like, yeah, I think the NBA is more fun to watch right now than it's ever been. And the two of us watch most games, most years, not most games, but you know what I mean. We watch pretty much everything we can, like you were talking about. It's more fun to watch than it's ever been. And a lot of that has to do with just how many quality dudes are out on the court at any given moment. Like, it's crazy how deep every team is. Like, even bad teams, like their seventh dude is like, hey, I'd probably take that guy, like it's pretty nuts. And I think that we're starting to see like a clear formula, like you were starting to say, like the teams that have been succeeding at a high level so far this season and in recent memory are teams that built efficiently. They built their team up efficiently. There was never like super huge swings for any of those teams in terms of here's 6 picks and whatever. I mean, look at the teams that did that. There's only a handful where it really worked out. Like the Lakers with Anthony Davis is probably the ultimate like 50-50, like kind of depends on how you look at success in the NBA. They won a championship. Most people, including myself, would say you can't be mad. You got the championship out of it, right? But look at where they're at. I mean, this is literally, they are where they're at now because of that trade. If they hadn't made that trade, there would be a lot more quality around LeBron right now. And I know Anthony Davis is playing out of his mind, so it's kind of hard to use it right now as an example, but it's still true. It's one dude versus they could have had Lonzo, Ingram, whoever the picks would have ended up being. Who knows what it would have been? Their team would have definitely been deeper if they hadn't made the trade. So it's tough, man. The only team that I've seen in recent memory, and we have to see because it's so recent, but the Cleveland Cavaliers, the trade for Donovan Mitchell is maybe one of the last great examples of like efficiently still taking a big swing. But that was really out of, they had so much abundance of quality stuff to give up, And even then, you look at what they gave up, and they still didn't give up any of their 3 best players in that trade, which is exactly what you want to do if you're making a huge swing for any player. They had lots of little pieces that add up into a whole. And usually I would say the tried and true rule of you don't want to trade the best player in any trade, right? Usually that rule is totally apt and adequate, and you should use that as a function of any good NBA trade, like grading anything. But sometimes it does work out for both teams if the situation is right. And in this case, it looks like it worked out for both teams, but definitely not for the Clippers, going back to the origin of our discussion.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy how similar their situation is to Brooklyn. It's just they don't get talked about because they're not controversial. That's literally the difference. Yeah. It's the same amount of success has happened, if not even less. But technically, I think the same because they both went to a conference finals with their current iteration of their squads. So it's tough, man. It's tough. It's crazy to me that both of those teams were constructed in the same off season. And both of them are definitely going to remain this is why we don't do this. We're never going to do this again. Because the Clippers might even be more egregious because they lost more quality. And, my deep love and affection for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander goes very deep. Before even his superstar turn this season, I would have said the same thing. Shouldn't have given him up, but they did. But that was what trades were like back in 2018. Which it's crazy that it was only 2018. Like that's
Mhm.
nuts. Like it
Yeah.
feels like a lifetime ago that those dudes went to the LA Clippers. I remember exactly where I was when I heard that Paul George trade happened. I remember it like it was yesterday, thinking like, wow, this team is going to be dominant. They're going to win the championship. Not so much, not so much. But let me ask you this, Bernie.
Yeah.
Who's it on? Who's it on more here? Because wasn't the writing on the wall with Kawhi at the time? You know, like this, it's not the most unfortunate thing that happened with Kawhi was getting hurt the way he did, tearing his ACL. That was what he did, right?
I believe I think this was
In
the
the playoffs.
ankle. This is the ankle injury from Zaza Pachulia sliding underneath him. And then that kind of, remember, they were up by they were up by a lot.
Yeah. But what
And
was the
I
what
think
was the thing that hurt him in the bubble? Didn't he get hurt in the bubble? Am I making that up?
he didn't get hurt in the bubble. It was a couple years before that. He was on the San Antonio Spurs at the time.
Yeah.
He got Zaza
That's the
Pachulia.
old injury. That's the
Yeah.
old injury. But
Yeah.
wasn't he out for a full year because of something else that happened not
I,
that
bel
long ago?
I believe he tore his ACL, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought,
Yeah,
I
he
thought
tore his
that's what it
ACL
was
last
too.
year.
Yeah. Okay, so like that being like the only extenuating circumstance, right? He was still this guy. Like the injury you're talking about is a great example. Like he has been hurt and not played most games in a regular season for years now. It
Yeah.
was that way before he went to the Clippers. So I guess my question is like, is this a failure on the Clippers part, like the organizational side of it, like hedging all their bets on this guy? Or who is it? Or is it just a little bit of everybody? Who do you think?
I think it's just a little bit of everybody because when I think about what happened in the whole San Antonio situation, it obviously became a much bigger deal. It started you started now questioning the NBA doctors at this point. Like,
Yeah.
are they, here to help the team? Like, are they here to help the player? Are they here to help the team? And it started, and when you live in a world like that where you start questioning, medical stuff like that, that's when it starts to become an issue. At least for me personally, just because it's kind of like, the doctor should always be there to help the player. Um, and if there's
Mhm.
any doubt like that, then it starts to, I would say tarnish or, hurt the legitimacy of like some doctors, which
Yeah.
may or may not be fair. But I think it starts to question that sort of situation where it's like, oh, well, can I trust this doctor if he's the team doctor and all he wants to do is just get me out there to play rather than, okay, let's try to focus on the injury. And obviously, it led to what it did right now, right? Where went to Toronto, won the championship, then got hurt again when he went to LA, played 57 in 1920, and then played 52 in 2021. And then obviously didn't play last year because of an ACL injury. And I think in terms of who I want to blame, obviously I think the organization should take most of the blame just because I think they should understand who Kawhi Leonard is as a player at this
Yeah.
point. Like, he has not played a full season in a very long time. He hasn't even played more than 65 games since the 2016 season where he played
Yeah.
74.
That's
Um,
exactly my point. You knew who he was. You should have known who he was because he wasn't showing anything differently before that. He did the same thing in Toronto. They let him do it in Toronto.
yeah. My only like concern maybe is for them is just kind of like for maybe more so for Kawhi is, how much of it is kind of like a mental type of thing where it's like, oh, well,
Yeah.
I don't know if I really want to go in there or if it's really an injury. Like that's the thing that we can never understand just because we're not in Kawhi Leonard's body. We don't know how his body feels. But I will
Yeah.
say that I do think that he can play a lot more than he's shown right now.
Hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, like thinking about it a little bit more now, it has to go in the organization because they have to know what guy Kawhi Leonard is. Like you gave him the big contract, how the uncle is, how Kawhi Leonard like cannot continuously play game after game after game, and I think it's starting to become a big issue now for the Clippers, and they have to decide what they're gonna do because they need to start moving on from Kawhi Leonard, in my opinion, at some point. Um,
Probably and Paul George too. I
yeah,
mean, It's because the timeline, Bernie. I mean, we bring it up all the time. The timeline on this team is all screwed up now. Because they're one of the craziest things is Kawhi is 31.
Yeah.
Like Kawhi is the oldest 31-year-old I've seen in my entire life. I'm
He's like,
28. I'm 28. Kawhi does not feel 3 years older than me. That's mind blowing to me. I feel like Kawhi is like be my father at this point. He's not, obviously. He's only 3 years older than me, but the dude he's been around the block. He's been in the league for a long time.
yeah.
Had a lot of minutes in his early career in very hard situations. I mean, I could only imagine how guarding LeBron the way he did in those finals, when he was with San Antonio. I mean, just that at the time, that had to put so much pressure on his body, right? But
Yeah.
even then, the Clippers knew. The Clippers had to have known. And then even then, the bigger problem is that they did the Nets situation. They let Kawhi come in, pick who he wanted his running mate to be. He said, "I want Paul George." They gave up the farm for Paul George. I mean, that trade, in retrospect, is mind-blowing. Like,
Yeah.
because I think we need to reevaluate that trade, Bernie. Like in the rankings of bad trades in the 2010s, there would be a lot of people who would push back instantly and say, "What are you talking about? They got Paul George. He's like all NBA level." He had that stretch, I think it was it 2 seasons ago, where he was like a borderline MVP candidate. I mean, he was crazy good he's been crazy good for huge stretches and put that team on his back while Kawhi's been injured on and off. But it's amounted to nothing. And if we're going to use that championship metric that we talked about with Anthony Davis,
Yeah.
nothing. Not only that, they have embarrassing moments in the playoffs to show for their, huge trades. So, because what did they give up, Bernie? Was it 3 or 4 firsts, Danilo Gallinari and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Was it 4 firsts? I think it was 4. 4 firsts. And even then, it was the same thing as the Nets situation, where they had this really tight core of players who overperformed and took them to a playoffs and had a little bit of playoff success. That was like Pat Bev and Lou Williams and Montrez. And then they blew it up for a trade.
Yeah. So really quick, here's the trade. OKC receives Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, and 5 first-round picks.
Oh my gosh. That needs to get talked about as one of the worst trades in the last few years, man. That's crazy. Because how many of those firsts have already carried over? Do we know? I don't know if that's an easy thing to find out.
So Clippers first-round picks, 22, 24, and 26, along with 2 first-round choices via Miami. And OKC obtained the rights to swap first-round picks in 23 and in 25.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with you, Pete. I think that maybe one of the episodes or one of our live streams that we should do probably in the next couple weeks is probably talk about the trades, the biggest trade failures or biggest trade blunders in the last like 10 years, maybe last 5 years.
We could do both ways. We could do both ways too.
Yeah.
Let's do the last 10 years. We could do good and bad. Good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, good, bad, and the ugly for trades. Yeah, we should definitely do that because, I mean, this is, again, Paul George, without any injuries is definitely a top player in this league. I'm not going to disrespect Paul George in that sense. But with the injury history that we know about, not just the unfortunate leg injury, but more so like it seems like his shoulders are always hurting. Now he's got knee problems. I mean, this is starting to become a big issue for the Clippers at this point. I mean, the Clippers have to decide really quick what they're going to do with their squad because clearly I don't think you can tank because I think tanking just allows the other team to get better position.
Well, that means they don't have their pick either, right? They have a swap with OKC, so they definitely can't tank.
And so to me, that's kind of 50% off League Pass. Interesting. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, this is the frustrating part. What's up, Russ? This is the frustrating part for me when it comes to the Clippers, and we're probably beating a dead horse at this point, but it sucks to see because I know if healthy, this Clippers team is definitely on the top echelon of like top 4, maybe top 3 in the West, but there's something that's needs to be said. Like the best ability and the best like ability is availability. And
Yeah, oh yeah.
if you're not available for your team to help win games, to help battle in playoffs, to help like beat teams that you probably normally should beat, then I think the Clippers right now are in a big world of hurt. I mean, let me
Yeah,
see
they
really quick. They're 11-9. Like this team should be probably. I mean, the West kind of beats up on itself, unfortunately. But they should at
tough.
least be not losing a lot of games. Like I honestly think this team should be number one. Like thinking about the
If
talent
they were
level.
healthy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this team should be probably like 14-5, like at this point.
If they
But
if you have Kawhi and Paul George actually playing on your team with all these dudes, I mean the West is pretty tight, but I mean you have the best perimeter defense. You should, in theory, have the best perimeter defense. You should just have some of the best defense in the league. Because like even like Zubac is a serviceable guy down low in terms of protecting the rim.
yeah,
Uh, it's so tough, man, because on paper this team really did have all of the parts necessary to compete in this league. Like they were kind of ahead of the curve in terms of accumulating, like I said, these 3-and-D wings, and just you know they have a coach that was underrated when they got him, outperformed and showed everybody how good of a coach, including us. We were Ty Lue detractors at first,
yeah,
and he proved us wrong. And he's an incredible coach. If they didn't have Ty Lue, imagine how poor this experience would have gone for them. I mean, the dude has literally cobbled together teams good enough of making it into the playoffs and winning some games here and there. But if they had, gosh, just about any other coach, imagine if they had somebody like Tibbs or Doc Rivers still, right?
yeah,
Imagine if they had Doc Rivers still with this team. They would have been nightmarish for a few of those seasons. So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we could move off the Clippers, but it's a bummer. And I agree with you. I think they should start looking to do something. I honestly don't think they could get off of Kawhi right now if they tried. I think it would be really tough.
No,
If
I don't
they
think they can
did,
get
they
off
wouldn't.
anybody.
I think they could get Paul George out of there for a lot. I bet somebody would go pretty deep for Paul George, to be fair. But the question is that even you can't tank, like we were
Yeah,
saying. You can't tank. You gotta compete. So they need to look at something. They got to look at something. If I were them, and I hate to say this because I don't want to see it happen, but they got to go get somebody big who can turn the ship around and carry some weight while Kawhi gets healthy. Like I would be looking to go get Kevin Durant if you could swing it. Go get somebody, Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know who it is, but they
yeah,
of all teams should go do something because they can't
definitely.
be bad. And that pick swap in 2025 just gets uglier by the day too. Because
Yeah,
that one, imagine how good the Thunder might be in 2025. You have Shea Gilgeous-Alexander looking like a superstar. Your guy Chet, who knows who they get in this upcoming draft with all their picks they have. I mean, they could be pick swapped out of like a top 5 overall pick that season. So
yeah,
they have to compete for the next few years here, do
yeah,
something. But yeah, we could get off the Clippers. They're
yeah,
a bummer to me. It's not even a happy like
yeah.
less competition in the league. I feel just sad for them.
Yeah. And people, let us know in the comments section down below. What do you guys think of the LA Clippers? Are you disappointed in the Clippers? What's your opinion on the Clippers? We'd love to know what you guys think in the comments section down below. And let us know what happens to both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Do they stay? Do they leave? Because this is obviously turning into a messy situation. So let us know in the comment section down below. All right. Should we get talking about Mr. Palermo's Kings? I think
Yeah,
that's kind
yeah.
of
Kings,
the
the
Kings.
Beam team.
The
Let's talk
Beam
about it.
team. Let's talk about the Beam team. Here's what I'll say about the Sacramento Kings. I was a very big detractor. I'm still am. I'm not gonna get off my. I'm gonna stay on it. I'm gonna stay on the Sacramento Kings, just missing out on the play-in. But currently, the Sacramento Kings are playing out of their gourd right now. And it's
Yep.
thanks to Mike Brown, the defense, and obviously De'Aaron Fox playing tremendous basketball, and also Sabonis doing his thing for this team. I think that this team, also Kevin Herter, man, Kevin Herter's playing really well. Um,
we're gonna talk about Kevin Herter.
yeah. And so obviously the Kings are playing really well, second in the Pacific Division. Uh, obviously with the roster that they have, the schedule that they've had so far. The last couple two games they've lost. But they've beaten teams like the Memphis Grizzlies, obviously beat the brakes off the Brooklyn Nets, beat the Golden State Warriors, beat the Lakers, beat the Cavaliers. Um, this is starting to become sort of a special team in Sacramento, I would say. And so Pete, I know that you are more of a believer in them than I am. So what's your take on the Sacramento Kings this season? Obviously, for every win they get at home, the beam lights up and they're, winning games, and that's kind of contributed to a lot of things. Some basketball gods type of deal.
Yeah.
What's your take on this Kings team? Are they for real? Are they legit? I know we talked about them in a cap or no cap segment. But are they legit? That's the big question.
So it's tough to say because I do think they are legit. However, I think there's going to be a little bit of it's almost a mix of two things. I think they're outperforming a little bit. I think the shooting has to come down just a little bit. Their offensive efficiency is just absurd at the moment, and their shooting splits are like just absolutely bonkers. Like just Kevin Herter alone is shooting 50% from three on more than 7 attempts per game. That's mind blowing. If he did that a full season, it would be a historic season, I'm pretty sure. And even then, I just don't think he can do it. And I love Kevin Herter. I mean, Kevin Herter, think about how much the Hawks are just, dreading how poorly they chose some of their little things like that. Like Kevin Herter would be perfect for the Hawks right now. The Kings, let's stay on them though. The Kings are tough because I do think they need to make a couple moves. I think that the best version of the Kings we're yet to see, which is, a little strange because they are outperforming, like I said, but they have so many quality players on their squad. They're so deep. Sabonis taking less shots than he's taken in years. I think since his rookie season, he's taking less shots, but he just is such a great team player in terms of doing exactly what's necessary on whatever squad he's in. And this team is a perfect example. Like he's setting a ton of screens. He's a rebound machine. Sabonis, got to give your credit to Sabonis. The dude is just exactly what you look for in a borderline all-star player. I know he's been an all-star. Probably won't be this year just because the offense has gone down a little bit. Yeah. But that's not for lack of him being great. He's been awesome. Yeah. And they haven't even seen very good Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray's been pretty bad so far. Yeah. He was okay in the beginning, got hurt, and then it's just kind of he's been in a slump here, especially shooting. I think his 3-point shooting recently has been atrocious. Yeah. But how polished he is, it'll come around. I'm not worried about Keegan Murray.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say for this team, and the most impressive thing that I could even give them credit for, is just their spacing and off-ball movement is some of the best in the league right now. Like they're always moving, they're always communicating, they're always looking to get themselves and their teammates in the best position possible, which sounds so obvious. And I don't know if you get as frustrated, Bernie. I'm sure you do. There's some teams in the league that you just watch just stand still. Half their players just will get in the corner and just stand there, man. And it's like there's some of these guys that could be so much better. They could unlock so much more of their game if they just watched the Warriors play or watched even this Kings team play. See what they're doing with themselves when they don't have the ball. And you see how that's affecting some of these guys in terms of the looks they're getting. Like Kevin Herter shooting as good as he has primarily been because of the spacing and how open he is when he gets to shoot. He should never be open, but he gets open because they're always moving. The biggest beneficiary of all of it is De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox is playing far and away the best basketball of his entire life, as far as I'm concerned. The best offensive efficiency I've ever seen from him, but he's also playing much better defense than I've ever seen from him too. So, credit to Mike Brown. Credit to Mike Brown. Mike Brown has been a great assistant coach in the league for a while. Had a couple stints. I honestly don't think he gets enough credit for for his time in Cleveland, the first time around, back when LeBron was young, right? You remember that? Like
Yeah.
those teams were so bad, and he would always have those Cavaliers teams in the upper echelon of defensive teams in the league, and they had no business being there. They had no
Yeah.
business. Go back and look at those squads. They were not good outside of LeBron, and he still had them coached right. So credit to Mike Brown because he's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah.
But it's all of it, man. It's what I get on my rants about, and I've been ranting about recently in terms of coaches putting their players in the best position possible for the player themselves, right? And this team is so far this season one of the top 3 examples of that because even you look at guys like Davion Mitchell, right? Coming off the bench, but in the perfect position for him to succeed. You
Yeah.
know, he doesn't have to shoot a ton offensively, be like that guy. He just comes in and is a stopper for them, and that's exactly where he's at in his career. It's just I don't know, man. They're just so fun to watch. I like how much they like each other. It seems like they like to play. And if I had any recommendation for anybody, watch how Kevin Herter and Sabonis play together. They look like they've played together for so long, and they just started playing together. It's crazy. The communication, they know
Yeah.
exactly where each other is going to be and where to go. It's a thing of beauty, and that is to me just a sign of great leadership on the team, and even
Hmm.
better, just communication as a whole. So,
Yeah. I
yeah, man,
definitely
I love it.
I definitely agree with you there. I mean, when I look at this squad, more so in terms of, obviously I have my biases on what I think of the Kings are going to be
Sure.
this year, but they definitely do have a little bit of a deeper squad than I think a lot of people realize. Obviously Sabonis being the starter, Metu, who I've loved, coming out of college. I'm hoping that he can get a chance. Rashawn Holmes, I think is starting to fall off in the depth chart. I think it's time for the Lakers to try to
Yeah, he's been bad.
try to
He's been
poach
bad.
him, and just kind of see what they can get from him. I think that they could potentially get some pretty good from Rashawn Holmes. I think he just needs a new challenge. Obviously Trey Lyles, good kind of depth, third string
We haven't even
guy.
talked about Malik Monk has been incredible
Yeah, Malik
as a
Monk is
bench guy.
yeah
Ooh,
coming off the bench, obviously from his Laker days last year, like balling out. Like he's still balling out for the
yeah, he is.
Sacramento Kings. I mean, this team is good. And I think that De'Aaron Fox is playing the way he is because of the fact that a lot of people started to question the move to move Tyrese Halliburton over to Indiana and kind of have the team built around, maybe not built around, but one of the star focal points will be De'Aaron Fox at the point rather
Yeah.
than Tyrese Halliburton. Obviously, I'm one of those guys. I'm a big Tyrese Halliburton guy, and I'd rather build around him. But De'Aaron Fox is kind of showing people like me, like, hey, like, yeah, you can love your Tyrese Halliburton, but I'm here too. I'm still here balling. And he clearly is. I mean, I can't discredit what De'Aaron Fox has done up to this point. Obviously, um, he's playing tremendously right now, and that's something that the Sacramento Kings are going to continue to need to have if they want to stay within the 6th seed and avoid the play. Well, I guess would they avoid? No, they would avoid it, and
Yep.
just like be a playoff team. I think that this team, I think, is still, in my opinion, just one piece away from really being a playoff contender. But clearly, Kevin Herter is picking up the slack for that missing superstar that I think that should be there. And so we'll see what if Kevin Herter can continue to do this the whole season. Because he kind of has his moment. He had his moments in Atlanta. And
Mhm.
there was times where I was like, yes, like this is what the Hawks needed, and then there were times where he just could not hit the bright side of a barn, um, or the broad side of a barn. But I think that this team, depth wise, is really deep. I think this team, starter wise, has a pretty good starting core unit. And like you said, I think Keegan Murray obviously is struggling, but I think that's just kind of the highs and lows of a rookie at this point. Like rookies are going
Yeah.
to have their moments, and they're going to have their bad moments. And so, I think Keegan Murray will probably take another half the season to really get acclimated to the NBA and acclimated to the way that Mike Brown wants to play. And I think as soon as that happens, I think the Kings are going to be a little bit more dangerous than I think a lot of people realize. But saying this, as much as I was proven wrong, it's a fun team to watch. It's definitely a fun team to watch. And if
Yeah.
I was watching them a couple days ago against my Celtics, and so I'm excited to see what they're able to do, man.
Yeah. There's one thing too. They're in an interesting spot as far as our beloved timeline is concerned, right? Like they're fairly young, but they're also not super duper young. Like they've
Yeah,
actually kind of constructed their team in an unconventional way in the sense that they don't have a lot of their own picks out there at this point. You know, like De'Aaron Fox, obviously, but he's been with the team now for almost what has he been in the league for 6 or 7 years now? He's been in the
Let
league for
me
a while.
see.
Um, but he's been in the league for a while. Davion Mitchell and Keegan Murray are basically the guys
6
they've
years.
drafted. 6 years. Um, it feels like longer with De'Aaron Fox. I feel like I've been watching him on the Kings for a decade now. But they're definitely in an interesting spot. They have a lot they could do, a lot they could move around.
Yeah,
I The interesting part is where they would upgrade because they've said recently that they don't want to move off of Harrison Barnes, which is interesting. But I also think like he clearly has wanted to be in Sacramento. He's been there for a bit now. And I mean, he seems like a great like veteran leadership presence to have around. He doesn't really ask for much. He just does all the little things. So
yeah,
I'd be interested to see what they did. But I agree with you. I think if they really want to be serious and go for it and compete, they should definitely consider upgrading somebody.
yeah,
The tough part is who, you know. And I would honestly, as much as I like Keegan Murray, I would consider if I was them just getting somebody who's in the timeline of all the other guys on your team. You know, package Keegan Murray and some picks, and then go get Karl Anthony Towns or something like that, right?
and you're on
Um,
this Karl Anthony Towns trade.
he's got to move. He's got to move. He's just got to move. Um, I don't even like Karl Anthony Towns. I'm more just trying to find the perfect fit for him and other, you know, because
Yeah,
this
I
is a
agree.
team that is they have to do something too because they're going for the playoffs now. They are the team in professional team in American sports that has the longest drought of making it into the playoffs, I believe,
Yeah,
in any sport. Seeing as the Seattle Mariners made the MLB playoffs this last year, every other team in the league has in any other league has been the playoffs more recently than them. So they're going for the playoffs no matter what. And if Keegan Murray is not ready yet, you have all these other guys that are ready. You have De'Aaron Fox making the leap. You have Sabonis is doing everything he can to be that guy that you traded for. And you also have to justify
yeah,
moving off of Halliburton in the first place because he's playing like all NBA level right now. So you
yeah,
have to justify it by really going for it with Sabonis. So if I were them, I'd really consider going for somebody. They're another sneaky. I know I brought this guy up already too. They're another sneaky. They should probably look at Kevin Durant team too. You know, whether Kevin Durant wants to play in Sacramento or not, who cares? You know, the question is, could they put a package together that's worthy of getting Kevin Durant? They're pretty on the borderline. I don't know if they could. You know, I don't know how much Keegan Murray moves the
yeah,
needle in that department,
yeah,
but they definitely are a team, I agree, that needs to move. And they have all the little pieces to make a deep run if they had that one more guy to put them over the top.
yeah,
I'd be the reason I say Karl Anthony Towns and I brought him up first is just because like I don't know. I like Sabonis at the five, but I wouldn't mind if you slid him into the four and had a bigger center who could go out around the perimeter like Karl Anthony Towns. That might be a really great fit for them in terms of adding even more shooting to the team, but
hmm,
also a more versatile five to go alongside Sabonis would be really nice because you know, he likes his down low game. He's got
yeah,
all these little moves. He can get to the basket. He's nice down low on offense. So find somebody to partner with him in a
yeah,
different universe. If he hadn't just spent a couple years with Myles Turner, I would say him again too. But that wouldn't work. Don't do that. Don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah. And we'll talk about Miles Turner's a little bit later. But let us know in the comment section down below, people. What do you think about the Sacramento Kings team? I'm still not a believer in terms of a playoff team, but they're a lot better than I think a lot of people realize. And let us know what that one piece could be to get them over the hump. We'd love to know your comments and opinions in the comment section down below. And let us know where you think the Sacramento Kings will finish this season. We'd love to know your guys' thoughts. Alrighty. I'll be right back, P. I gotta fix something really quick, and then I will be back. So I don't know if you wanna, entertain the people with
Let's do
something.
it.
And I'll be right back. It'll take like 3 minutes.
All right, do your thing. All right, chat. What are we going to talk about? Let me look at Real GM and see what's going on. Let's talk about Orlando for a minute. Orlando. While Bernie's gone, let me talk about my beloved Orlando. I've been watching a lot of Orlando basketball. And as I pulled him up on Real GM, it looks like Markelle Fultz is getting very close to playing again this season, or his season debut, I guess I should say. That's big news for them. Last year when Markelle Fultz came back from injury, they were, I think at the second half of last year, they were like in the top 3 defensive efficiency in the league, and that was all in line with when Markelle Fultz came back. Markelle Fultz, Paolo, whoever. Probably Franz play him at the 3. You have Jonathan Isaac, who still hasn't played. And I mean, how long? This team is so deep, man. They're so deep. And Jalen Suggs too, Sean. Jalen Suggs is starting to show that he has that guy that was at Gonzaga still in him, and there was some doubts for a little bit. He didn't have the greatest rookie season, but I love Orlando, and I haven't even talked about the guy that's showing out the most so far, and that's Bol Bol. Bol Bol is kind of prototype Wembanyama right now. He's kind of like the B movie version of Wembanyama in terms of what they could be, but who knows? Bol Bol keeps adding stuff to his game. They have a lot going for them in Orlando, and I really, really I think people should start keeping an eye on them as another team that, like a season from now, is going to have like a Memphis type jump. Like, look out, because whatever you think about Suggs and Fultz, all these other like kind of fringe, like good to long-term bets that they have a surefire guy in Paolo that's superstar status. They have another guy, in my opinion, is surefire as Franz is surefire based on what we've seen from him. He looks so good. My biggest question is, how do they combine stuff and start to turn all of the assets they have into something that's more like sustainable long term, because they have way too much. Because they have Cole Anthony, RJ Hampton. They have just so many guys that are on the fringe of like, do you want this guy long term? Do they even want Markelle Fultz long term? Do they want Jonathan Isaac long term? Who knows? But I like their coach, Jamal Mosley. I'm very in on Orlando. And if you're not watching Orlando, I think you should check them out because they're super fun to watch. Beyond even just Bol Bol. And then I think Paolo comes back from injury in the next couple days. So that will be very nice. Let me look at what else should we talk about. Let's look at I'm going to do this. Let's save that one. Let's talk about the Lakers, because I don't want to talk about them for too long. And if I talk about them now, we can justify skipping them in a little bit. The Lakers. Are people really getting fooled by the Lakers right now? Like, and I goodness, man. Anthony Davis is playing out of his mind. Not even a question. No shade at Anthony Davis whatsoever. No shade at LeBron. LeBron was incredible yesterday. They just back-to-back played the Spurs and beat them, and people are acting like they're back in full effect. Like, people do not watch enough basketball nowadays, man. There's a lot of box score looking, maybe more than there ever has been in NBA fandom history. But this Lakers 2 back-to-back beating the Spurs and all the overreactions to that is pretty astounding to me, because
all right, we're back.
It's pretty tough. Bernie, what do you think about that real quick? We can skip over the Lakers. I just started talking about the Lakers. I talked about Orlando really quick too. But
what about the Orlando Magic?
I was just talking about how deep they are, how many players on their team I really like. But the Lakers, why are people getting fooled with the Lakers right now, Bernie?
I don't know if it's necessarily fooled. I think that the Lakers are playing a lot better.
They are, but it was against the Spurs two
True,
games in a row, and they're atrocious. I mean,
true.
the Spurs might be doing the best tank job I've ever seen right now.
The Utah Jazz are starting to work
They're
their way. They're starting to
oh,
work their way into that tank.
they're sniffing their way back into the competition. The problem is it's going to be really tough for them to drop that many games. It's going to be pretty tough.
Let's
But
see
the
here.
Spurs, have you seen what the Spurs are doing? Where they are strategically benching the best player for whoever matches up against the other team's best player in most of their games. Have you seen that?
Where like Vassell gets off the.
Yeah, again, like when the other team has like a really solid two guard that Vassell would be up against, they bench him. When they played the Lakers the first game, Jakob Pertl sat against Anthony Davis. Like if you look at it, keep paying attention to it.
I was
Their
wondering.
rest,
I wonder.
their rest schedule is very strategically. Whoever the best matchup is for their opposing team, we're gonna let you sit that night. It's pretty crazy, man. It's awesome. they're
Yeah.
they're big brain in it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like when I look at the Lakers schedule the last couple of games, they won against the Nets, they beat the Pistons, they beat the Spurs, they lost to the Suns, they beat the Spurs,
Worst,
beat the Spurs, and now they're gonna play the Pacers tonight, obviously another bad team.
some of
Um,
the worst teams in the league they've beat, and people are thinking they're all the way back.
no, I mean, like I think they'll be exactly where we thought they were gonna be, which is a play-in team, may or may win that game, but at the end of the day, they're not gonna necessarily I would say beat anybody significantly unless they get another superstar, or if Russell Westbrook goes back to 2013, back to his like triple double
He has
days.
he
But
has legitimately been a lot better.
he has been a lot better, but I think they need someone else to like carry the load. But I think Anthony Davis has done that. I think when we talk
Yes,
about um whether or not, they should trade Anthony Davis or not. I was kind of in the camp that they shouldn't, and they should just kind of roll with what they got, and maybe trade Russell Westbrook. I'm not sure what they want to do there. Um, but I think that, you got to keep your two best players in LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and just kind of roll the boat with it. I understand that some of the role players are not playing up to snuff, but I think they'll be okay. They're not going to necessarily wow anybody. They're not going to beat the brakes off of teams. Like they're obviously not going to beat the top echelon teams, in my opinion.
mm-hmm.
But I think that they're solid enough to where they can get to a play-in game. And whether they win or lose, they'll probably lose in the first or second round.
Probably.
I don't necessarily think that they're gonna change anybody's opinion unless they make some dramatic changes. Maybe not even dramatic. Adding a guy like Myles Turner, who's another story we should actually segue right into.
Yeah,
Which Myles Turner is going to leave BDA Sports and is expected to join CAA. And I think CAA has like a lot of clients. I think Kevin Durant is one of them. I'm not.
yeah. I think they're the biggest. I think they're the biggest agency there is.
Yeah.
Like in general.
Yeah, and I could definitely see a situation in which, like Myles Turner, like in this article, they have the Clippers being a potential trade partner for him. I mean, if I'm the Lakers, I'm doing anything I can to make sure that Myles Turner ends up on my team. And just, again, role players like Buddy Hield, role players like Myles Turner are going to be the difference for them. I mean, we saw what happened when the Lakers had Rajon Rondo and they had Dwight Howard when they won their championship, and JaVale McGee. Like those guys were huge difference makers. They got second chance points. And if Anthony Davis continues to play the way that he does right now, which is, potentially one of the best bigs in the league, like that is the way that the Lakers are going to win championships, and they're going to win the NBA finals, is with great big play that can give them extra opportunities. Because again, LeBron James is going to give you what he can give you, but that stuff isn't going to lead to wins. It's now on the back of Anthony Davis, which we know can be fragile at times, but he's shown so far that he can handle the load at this current moment.
See, my biggest pushback and not to go too deep on the Lakers, I want to reorient back just into Myles Turner. I think Myles Turner should be a top priority for a lot of teams. Myles Turner is very good, like genuinely underrated. And I think a lot of that comes from just him being a trade target, literally, or a trade candidate for years now, and it not having gotten done at any point in time. I think that's like publicly devalued him, right? Like, why can't this guy get traded? They've wanted to trade him for years, or he's
Yeah.
been rumored to be traded.
Uh-huh.
But that's not really representative of who he is as a player. Like, he is a legitimate shot blocker in the league. He can shoot threes, which those two things alone is, I mean, that's a rare commodity to have a guy that can do both of those things, but he's more than that. He can do a lot of things on the court. We saw that a couple weeks ago. He had that 37-point game, 12 rebounds, I think. Crazy, crazy game. The biggest question is like you're gonna have to give up that 27 or 29 first round pick. And those picks are so good. Those picks are going to be so great because those are at the very worst lottery picks. At the very worst, they're lottery picks for this Lakers team. I have to question whether or not Myles Turner is worth even one of those. And I love Myles Turner. Is he worth a lottery pick in a few seasons for a team that might not have any of the guys on their squad that they have right now? Like, I just don't think he is, man. I think you have to go get somebody who's like, the value of those picks should be worth a guy that's a borderline, like, if not an all-star before, in my opinion. Those picks are too valuable. And if I'm the Lakers, I'm not getting rid of those picks for anything less than, you know, and people might say, you're crazy. It's 2 first-round picks. You don't usually trade 2 first-round picks that are on a team where the 2 best players might not be in the league in the time frame until the picks, like they might be trash by then. They probably will be. So I'm looking at guys like Zach LaVine, who's on the outs with Chicago. I'm looking at Bradley Beal. They want Bradley Beal. He's on one of the worst contracts in the league on a team that needs to be underperforming, and they're kind of just middling at the moment. I think the Wizards are 10-9. You have to go get somebody who's really like a long-term difference maker. And whether that's Beal or Levine, I don't know. But that's who I'd be looking at, those guys at bare minimum, to try and get something back, because somebody's going to force one of these trades and get a big contract off their team at some point this season. That's why I keep saying they need to wait. Just wait as long as you can. Hold out until the first unhappy guy on a bad contract is available, because as much as I like Myles Turner, there's going to be more valuable players than Myles Turner, and you don't want to ship out your only 2 assets and then look back and say, wow, I wish I held on to that just like a week longer. It's like that's like a panic crypto trade or something like that. You're like making the trade too soon, stock exchange trade, whatever it is, and then you look back and it's like, oh man, look at that. Look at the price of that thing now. I don't know. The Lakers are in a tough spot, man. I don't want to talk about them too much. Let's talk about Myles Turner, though. Because we did talk about this, like, what are the best fits for Myles Turner? Where would we like him to go? Has any of that changed? Is there a team that is sticking out to you, like, I really want him to go there? Or, Bernie, here's another question. Indiana kind of looks okay. Like, they have young talent in him, and Myles Turner's still pretty young. Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin is leading the Rookie of the Year race in a lot of places. If you're Myles Turner, are you still like desperate to get out of there? He's playing the best basketball of his entire career right now, alongside Tyrese Halliburton. Do you start recalibrating? Think maybe I want to stay here and build for the future? I think he's a little older than that, isn't he? Isn't he like? I think he's 27. 26. Yeah. Yeah. We need to go back to Milwaukee. Milwaukee. Let's have Milwaukee be our next topic after this. Yes. Yeah. Because I mean, long term, a good choice. I mean, maybe the best choice for them is to trade him for those Lakers picks. If those Lakers picks are on the board, I mean, in the next however long, they're going to have way more value than he has anyway. And that's not even an indictment of him. It's more those picks are just so good. Like the Lakers pick that the Pelicans have. We've talked about that pick ad nauseum, but that's like one of the most valuable assets in the whole league right now. So you can only imagine what the 27, 29 Lakers picks are going to be. So maybe they get those picks and they use that in a package for a bigger player. Who knows what it is? But I kind of am starting to agree with you. If I'm them, there's no way they're top 4 seed in 2 months. There's just no chance. I like the Spacers team. I like how they've been playing. I mean, Tyrese
Oh
Halliburton
man, I
has
was
been
on mute
out
that
of
whole
his
time.
mind. Oh, were you really? Oh
Yeah.
no. Oh no. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, Myles Turner, man. It's tough. I'd probably keep Myles Turner
Yeah.
if I was Indiana. Right now, you're too good. Your young guys are too young and too ahead of schedule to justify resetting everything and trading Halliburton just for or not Halliburton, but Myles Turner just for whatever. Um, okay, let you want to move on to let's talk about Milwaukee. You fine with that?
Yeah, let's move on and talk about Milwaukee. I think that it's you bring them up as a very interesting point. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about them.
Well, first I need to issue an apology. I was very wrong about something a week or two ago. Okay. And I'll own my mistakes on this channel and everywhere I go as best as I possibly can. All right. And I made a mistake with Brooke Lopez. Okay. I was wrong about Brooke Lopez. I was saying that they should look to upgrade Brooke Lopez, maybe get off of him. Um, I kind of I have to say sorry. Brooke Lopez is in a lot of places like a top candidate for defensive player of the year so far this season, justifiably so. I said that and then I watched a couple of their games in the last week and I just noticed like wow, Brooke Lopez actually is insanely good right now. He's playing some of the best defense I've ever seen from him. And you know, uh, he has been doing that all season, and I was wrong. I don't necessarily think they should move on from him just because when in the perfect Milwaukee Bucks situation that we've seen, it's him out on the court with Giannis, Middleton, and Drew Holiday. Those four guys together that's their big four. And last season, and part of the reason that I was, maybe jumping the gun on old Brooke Lopez is just because we didn't see Brooke Lopez for much of last season because the back injury. I think he had a surgery early last year. And that kept him out until the playoffs. And then even then, when he got back, he was super rusty. And I
Yeah.
attributed that to, well, Brooke Lopez is getting old, right?
Hmm.
I mean, he's turning back the clock. This dude looks so good. And really, what he does is just he plays into his role maybe better than almost any player in the league as far as he does
Hmm.
exactly the things that he needs to do at the highest level he can do them. So That's my biggest retraction probably so far this season, other than the Minnesota retraction of wow, they're terrible. Brook Lopez shouldn't replace him yet. He's still been very good chemistry guy. Everything you can say positive about him on the court, it's still true. I mean, he's been very good. But
Yeah.
my question is this, Bernie. We were talking about them doing something, right? You brought up Myles Turner. I said that's why we mentioned them a minute ago, or why I mentioned them, is just because last week I was saying Myles Turner should be somebody they should look at to replace Brook Lopez. But I'm not sure that's the case. And now we've started to hear some Jay Crowder rumors for them. They want Jay Crowder. He's like I think they're leading the race to get him. And I've heard that Grayson Allen is somebody they're willing to move, but the Suns don't want him. What do you think that the Bucks should do? Should they do anything until they get Chris Middleton back? Because I'm kind of in the camp of don't do anything.
Don't do anything until
You have all the guys. You have all your guys that won the championship 2 seasons ago, and you have all the guys from last year where you probably should have and could have won the championship if Chris Middleton didn't get hurt. So I'm gonna go into the camp of don't do anything. Just wait. What do you think, Bernie?
I mean, I think you can always improve your roster. I think that the Milwaukee Bucks, I think they should make a move for another 3-point shooter, because I think that they're missing that kind of PJ Tucker role.
Maybe that's Jay Crowder.
And I've never been a big believer in Jay Crowder. I think playoff Jay Crowder has worried me enough as someone
he's fool's gold for the most part.
And I just think I don't know if you necessarily want that I wouldn't say toxicity, but you definitely don't want that energy if he's out there just complaining about playing time or complaining about whatever, because you want someone that wants to be there. You want someone that wants to give you, everyone has to sacrifice, even the superstars have to sacrifice their minutes and even their shot opportunities. And so is Jay Crowder going to be one of those guys that's willing to be a sacrifice type of guy? That I feel like it's yet to be seen from him.
Yeah.
And, he's obviously made a big fuss about it from one of the best, kind of somewhat ran organization. I would say Monty Williams, kind of being the conductor of that team. If you're not going to get along with Monty Williams, then I don't know who you're going to get along with, because that dude is the most patient guy in the world. He loves his players. And the fact that, Jay Crowder has kind of talked the way that he has would worry me as someone that is trying to trade for him, and to be like, well, do you want to be on my team? Do you not want to be on my team? Like where are we at right now with where you want to be with us, or do you want to just be on your own?
I mean, we're literally seeing Jay Crowder not be that guy right now. There was a question of he wasn't going to start for the Suns, right? It's going to be Cam Johnson. And some minute reduction just because Cam Johnson's kind of coming into his own, and that was too much for Jay Crowder. So I do think you have to wonder, like, is that the type of guy you want? And you just said it, and I joked, he's fool's gold, but that is Jay Crowder. I think Jay Crowder is one of the most what's the right word for this? I think it's not even so much overrated, but it's misevaluated players. Like, I think people really outgrade Jay Crowder for some of his big moments that he's had, and they look at those big moments and they say this is that guy, but he's not really that guy. One of the biggest things that people always point to is the defense he played on LeBron in, what was it? Wasn't last year, obviously. It was two years ago, the year after the bubble, where they went to the playoffs and played the Lakers in round 1. And sure, he played great defense, but LeBron was not. I mean, that team wasn't going anywhere. So you could look at it and give Jay Crowder all the credit in the world. He did play great defense against LeBron, but where is that all the other series? Where is that any other year? I just don't really get it with Jay Crowder. It's just such an overestimation of what he's actually capable of. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't be looking at Jay Crowder personally, especially on a team that has really traditionally good chemistry as far as the Bucks are concerned. Even when the times get tough for them, they really don't ever crumble as far as their chemistry is concerned. They're not throwing each other under the bus. Nobody's giving each other, side eyes or anything like that. It's just they have a great culture in Milwaukee, and I'm not saying Jay Crowder's going to go there and tank that, but I just don't know if that's the type of guy that you want to go get. Probably not, as far as I'm concerned. But
Yeah.
I'd keep it the way it is. See if you need anything. Let's do one more segment, and there's a good lead into this because a quote from Giannis that just came out, Bernie.
Okay.
Did you see the quote from Giannis? What he said? He's
I think
talking about Evan Mobley,
yes, I did
my
see
guy.
that. I saw that. It's actually one of the stories I was thinking about talking about, but
Well, let's use it. Let's use our Milwaukee Bucks conversation and Giannis as a Milwaukee Bucks player as a nice little carryover into Cleveland. You
all
know,
right.
but Giannis just recently, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, Giannis is quoted as saying, in reference to Evan Mobley, he can be better than me. Antetokounmpo told Cleveland.com. I don't see why he can't. It's up to him. I will always try and improve every day, but he has the skill set to be a very, very good player. He's 7 feet tall. He can move well. He can shoot. He's smart. As you said, he watches tape of other, so on and so forth, right? But here's the thing, right? Getting into Cleveland. Cleveland, the more of this season that I see, and I know they just, who did they play last night? Cleveland. Let me look this up real quick before I keep going.
They played
Cleveland,
the Bucks last night.
and they lost pretty bad.
117 to 102. Yes.
Not a close game if you watched it. It was pretty rough. Just not a very good shooting night for Cleveland in general. But the thing about Cleveland is, Bernie, I really think this team is like a legit. I would put them in my top 4 most likely to win the championship as of right now, based on what I've seen, the coaching, the roster they have, all the pieces they have. There's literally like one spot on this whole team that I would say could definitely be upgraded, and it's their 3. Their starting 3 could definitely use an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with Giannis. And I've said this since, Mobley was in the draft coming up. People didn't really watch a lot of him at USC. This dude has all the pieces to be one of the 5 best players in the NBA. He has all of them. He's so smart beyond his years. He's always in the right spot. He is one of, if not already, the most versatile defender in the NBA. He might not be that just yet, but he's right there. He can guard anybody on the court. But what have you seen from Cleveland? I think my virtues or my beliefs on Cleveland have been very well made as far as this season has already been concerned. But what do you think about Cleveland, Bernie? I know you weren't as much of a believer as I was coming into this year. Have you seen anything that's made you change your mind a little bit?
I mean, I was always a believer in them. I think that Bickerstaff is a good coach, and I think that's where my kind of, I would say, belief continues with them, is that I think that Bickerstaff does a great job with his unit. Adding Donovan Mitchell, that was probably the part that I wasn't sure about. Like, can he continue his success? He clearly shown that he can. I think with Cleveland, I think they're a really good squad. I think you are right about their 3, though. They're starting Dean Wade. Not a bad player, and obviously Cedi Osman gets in there as well in that spot. But Cedi plays more of the 4 in this team. I think that this team is not bad. I think that there are pieces of it that are obviously need some upgrades and things like that. But for the most part, I like Isaac Okoro as kind of like that 3rd guy coming off the bench. I like Cedi Osman. I've always liked him. Robin Lopez is a rebounder. Kevin Love would be the one position I would be like, okay, let's see if we can upgrade that. Because I think at this point, Kevin Love isn't the same Kevin Love that he once was. I know that he can do some things. I know, but he always gets hurt. That's always been kind of
He does. He's just my thing with him. He's been such a good, like, valuable veteran team presence for them.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. But I think that at some point they'll need to upgrade his position if they want to win the championship. I think this team has all the sauce. I think that they're still missing, if Caris LeVert can continue his like Brooklyn Nets Caris LeVert days, then you have a solid 6-man off the bench with him. I think this team can do a lot of good things this season. I think they've clearly shown from last year to this year, like the improvement that they've made. I want to see Evan Mobley take that next step. And that's kind of where I'm at with kind of like the Evan Mobley stuff. Like, again, I was wrong on him when he came out of the draft in terms of, I think he was going to be really good. I think I said his ceiling was Jaren Jackson Jr. like at his best, like Triple J at his best.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he can surpass that. I just think that from what I've seen from him so far, I think that I need to see just a little bit more. And I think that he will eventually get there. I just think it's taken him a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I see for me, and I'll defend my guy here a little bit. I think a lot of that is just like he definitely leaves a little bit to be desired on offense. I think what's the average, like 13.5 points, I think right now.
14 and a half.
Okay, even a little bit better. But even then, you'd hope for more, especially because his offensive skill set is not necessarily representative of 14.5 points. In my opinion, I think he's better offensively than that.
I think it's his
But I think a
threes,
lot of
to
that
be
has to
honest.
do his three. He definitely needs to shoot a little bit more often too. But he doesn't really need to with this team. Like, I think that's part of the problem, is it's not really what he gets asked to do with this
Yeah,
Cleveland squad.
I agree.
And that kind of leads me into my next thing. I think, honestly, they have the best backcourt in the NBA. Am I crazy to say that?
The best backcourt, like with Garland and
Garland and Donovan Mitchell. I think that's the best backcourt in the NBA. I think in terms of the highest potential game for both of those guys on any individual night together. And even more importantly, and this is one of the reasons I was so huge on him going to Cleveland when it first happened, and we talked about it a bunch. Donovan Mitchell, that is, plays so perfectly to what Darius Garland is good at.
yeah.
And you've said this for years. I was a late adopter to the Darius Garland train, but I'm a full believer in this dude. I mean, he is one of the better passers and just offensive kind of on-court generals that is in the NBA right now. But the difference is that he could give you 50, and he has already this year. He could give you 50 efficiently too. I just think they play together so well already. Darius Garland, I almost said it again. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
I do think they might be the best backcourt. I think there's a couple teams that are some obvious competition for them. Like you might say Memphis with Bane and Ja Morant is definitely up for debate, especially how Desmond Bane was playing this season before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Atlanta is a question. The Warriors, I mean, their track record, I think we can say that maybe they're definitely past their prime. Clay, not Steph. Steph is playing probably the best season of his career right now. Do you think there's any other backcourts that are better than them? Like, it sticks out to me a lot when I watch them. Like, I'm mind blown by how good the two of them play together already.
Yeah, I mean, they probably have one of the best backcourts in the league right now. I would, obviously with Boston, they have more front court players with Tatum and Brown being the backcourt guy, but they definitely have like one of the better backcourts. I think Darius Garland, obviously, is playing really well right now. You can clearly see, like, from stat wise, everything is up. Assists are up. Steals are up. Percentages from the field goals are up. Like 42% from three is tremendous. I think the only thing down is his free throw. That just might be just because he hasn't taken enough. Yeah, so I think that this backcourt is definitely doing really solid. I think that when you also look at Mitchell's stats, I think that he is, 30 points a game right now. Obviously, up from his career highs and whatnot. This is definitely starting to become a very interesting team. I'm very excited for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Obviously, I think they're going to be a top 4 team in the East. Could be top 3 if all things play out. If the 76ers can figure their stuff out, then they'll probably be top 4. But for right now, top 3. Mitchell playing out of his mind. Mitchell playing really well, showing you assist numbers have been going on. I mean, this guy's playing tremendous right now, and I'm glad that
MVP status.
I'm glad that Cleveland is taking a chance on him, and clearly it's working out, because they are, I think, what are they, 4th in the East, 3rd in the East?
They're right there. Yeah.
Let me see here. Let me see the standings.
They
are
right
3rd.
Now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in a battle with these other bottom teams, that being like Pacers, Hawks, Philly, Raptors, Wizards, and all that. But I think that they could definitely be up there with the echelons of like a Boston or a Milwaukee, even with the way that
When
they with the way that
they
they play.
beat Boston twice already so
Yeah.
far this season too. So, and those were two of the best games so far this season. If you guys didn't watch those, I would highly recommend go back check them out. Very good games. I do think they lost to the Bucks twice.
Yeah.
They lost last night, obviously. I think they lost their first game to them too. They're an interesting team just because they have all the pieces I think necessary to get it all done. It's
Hmm.
just staying on the court, staying healthy, and consolidating a little bit, which we talked about in the beginning with the Clippers segment and the trades and Donovan Mitchell. This trade being pretty well constructed in terms of they didn't have to give up any of their core pieces that made them what they were last season.
Hmm.
But we're seeing it, and I think it's interesting to see players like Giannis, who's definitely a complimentary dude in general. Giannis being one of the nicer guys in the league, he's never afraid to, compliment other players. But it is interesting to see like the culture of the NBA. There's a thing that always happens when a team is on the rise and starting to be, a little bit worrisome for other squads,
Yeah.
where there's a little bit more attention and the big names start to compliment the guys on the squad and so on and so forth. You see this leap in terms of on-court quality, and then you have the leap in terms of off-court presence in the media and how much you hear about them. And that is a sign that I think people know that there's something cooking here. It's not just a
Yeah.
fluke. This isn't Chicago from last season where people were excited coming into the year for all the moves they made or whatever it was, getting DeRozan, and then they kill the bad teams in the league and kind of distract from how bad they were playing against good teams. This isn't that. This team is legitimately one of the best teams in the league. And I think, like you said, as much as I love Mobley, if he could get himself a little bit more involved on offense, start, hitting some more shots and, picking up the slack that three spot has for them in terms of their starting lineup, this team is going to be like really tough to deal with. Just defensively, super hard. But even then, how do you guard Garland and Mitchell? There's almost no team in the East or West that has anything that can match up with just having two guards like that. So I'm really excited for this team. I would say besides Boston, I've been the most impressed with Cleveland this season in terms of just night in, night out, how competitive they look and how far ahead of schedule they are. Boston is just perfectly carrying over what they did last season that made them special. That's why we don't even need to talk about them. They're killing it on both
Yeah.
sides of the court. Cleveland is kind of doing the same thing, but people didn't give them credit for it last season. We tried to point it out last year, but they just got so killed by injuries down the stretch that it fell
Yeah.
apart. This is the same thing that JB Bickerstaff had these guys doing last year, except now they have a 30-point per game scorer
Yeah.
who can carry them in clutch minutes down the stretch. That's
Yeah.
that's crazy. So I I really like this team, man. I'm a huge Cavaliers guy right now, especially with my guy Mobley. I love him.
Hmm.
I'm glad we talked about it. I just thought it was awesome to see Giannis is
Yeah.
paying attention to Mobley, seeing him.
Yeah.
That's big stuff. That's a big
Yeah.
leap to have.
That's
And Mobley's still 19.
Yeah, I mean, there's still tremendous room for improvement for Mobley, and the best part is that, like you said, he's 19 years old. He'll
He's
still
21. I
grow.
lied. He's
You lying to me. He's not Jason Tatum 19 anymore.
he's
Um,
not. He's
but
my Jay. He's my Jason Tatum is 19 guy though right now.
but I mean, he's still a young guy. I mean, 21 is still great. I mean, by the time I think you're
Hmm.
25, 26, I think you have to figure out what your game is at that point. And so, he's right on track to being a top player. I still think that, like I said, offensively needs to grow a little bit more in that area, but at the end of the day, he's playing really well. We're seeing great things from them, and I'm excited to kind of continue to watch from afar, like how this team does, up until the trade deadline, and seeing like what they need to do, if they need to add anybody. But so far, they've added the right pieces. They're playing really well. They're playing great basketball, and JB Bickerstaff definitely deserves a lot of credit, and definitely a Coach of the Year candidate for this year for sure.
For sure.
Um, All right, but let us know in the comment section down below, what do you guys make of the Milwaukee Bucks, which we talked about a little bit earlier in the stream, and also the Cleveland Cavaliers. Are the Cleveland Cavaliers for real, or are they pretenders? Let us know in the comment section down below. All right. I think I got maybe one more segment in me, unless Pete, you don't really have anything.
I could do one more. I
Let's
don't necessarily have anything specific to talk about, but I could definitely. I got as much time as you want to go.
let's talk about one more thing, which will just be kind of quick.
All right, let's do it.
Let's talk about a little bit of these kind of let's talk about kind of some, maybe a couple of disappointments, I would say. A couple of teams obviously talking about are, the Detroit Pistons, I think, for me, being a disappointing team. Hornets, we already know what they're about. Chicago Bulls being another disappointing team. Let's just talk about those two teams in particular. Obviously, the noise in Detroit right now is rebuild, retool, because I believe that Cade Cunningham is out right now, and he could be out for the season, depending on what happens. And then, of course, Chicago, clearly with the Zach LaVine stuff. I guess my biggest thing is, are those two teams the biggest disappointment right now in the NBA in terms of where people thought they should be? Obviously, no one thought that Detroit was going to be a barn burner. They were going to be, in the top 8, but we thought they would at least be competing a little bit more. And, I know they're a young team, but I still think they could do a little bit better, in my opinion. I think they could have at least, competed for at least 9 or 10, but right now they're battling for the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes.
Yeah, Detroit's in a weird spot, man. I mean, the Cade thing is a killer for them, right? I mean, he's the engine of the squad. He was definitely supposed to take that step and be the star player that, they hope they drafted at number 1. And, in the times where he's healthy, he's shown that he's definitely capable of doing so. That's not even a question. But we're definitely seeing some interesting stuff from the squad. You have to question Dwayne Casey with some of the rotations on this team are pretty poor.
Yeah.
But it's not like they have a lot to work with. I mean, they have literally the youngest player in the entire NBA in Jalen Duren. Gets heavy minutes for this team.
Yeah.
Isaiah Stewart is also injured too, who is, starting. It was looking like he had, taken another little jump this season in terms of his 3-point shooting. Marvin Bagels. I almost called him Marvin Bagels. Marvin Bagley took a little bit to get back. They're definitely a team that's been killed by injuries, but it's not really an excuse for how poor they've been. If anything, I think it just shows that maybe we were a little too excited about this young roster of unproven guys. A lot of these dudes have not really shown too much, and the only guy that has any real true pedigree besides Cade is Jaden Ivey, and he's a rookie, and he's been solid for them. Jaden Ivey's been pretty freaking good some nights, but it's a lot to ask of a guy like that. And even Bojan Bogdanovic, like, he's been very good for them, especially, obviously on offense. He's been an incredible offensive player, but they have no defense. They have nothing on defense. And even then, if Bogdanovic is your best offensive player, I mean, you don't have much. You don't have much to go for. So I do think this team. This is the tank team. This is the tank team this year. Like, who you're gonna have to see. Like, they're gonna be in top contention to get Wembanyama or whoever for a long time this season, probably the whole season, because, like you said, Cade might not play again this year.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what they're gonna do. I really think Bogdanovic still is. He's probably going to get traded, just because why even hold on to a guy that's averaging 20 on this awful team? You're probably going to have to move him. His contract extension that they gave him still very tradable. I don't know, man. What do you think, Bernie? We were really excited to watch this team, and most nights they're still fairly okay, decent to watch, but really not. They might be like one of the. They might be them and the Rockets are so far from even the teams that are like a step above them, like in terms of quality, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the disappointing thing for me from the Detroit Pistons side of things is that obviously Cade Cunningham being hurt definitely hurts their value of, moving forward in terms of, hey, let's build around like these guys. Like Cade Cunningham can have like rapport with Ivy, can have rapport with Bagley, Stewart, Durin. And I just think that that's kind of where my focus is at, is that like it sucks that he wasn't able to play a lot of basketball with those guys and build chemistry,
Mhm.
because they're going to definitely need it for next year when they try to battle for a play-in spot, which I think that's where my mind was at going into this year, was like, okay, this is just the year to like build together. To me, it's like the Orlando situation. Like this is the year where they're going to build together, be competitive in close games, but end up losing a lot of these games. But ultimately, I think without Cade, um, without a lot of these guys healthy and playing the games that they need to me, it's gonna feel like another lost season. Um, and which sucks because you don't want to waste the years of like Isaiah Stewart and Ivy, and you just don't want to waste years with these guys because there's a lot of stuff that you want to develop and grow with them. And so, you're
Yeah.
hoping that Cade Cunningham can be healthy for next year, or hopefully, be healthy for this year even, and be able to play. But at this point, it's looking very doubtful, just with the type of injury that he got. And so, wishing Cunningham the best, because I thought he was the best player in that draft. I still think so, just with his big body, being able to score, but also being able to dish out the rock. But I think this is going to be another year where Detroit basketball uh, goes by the wayside just due to injuries, and that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles for the Detroit Pistons. As much as I love what they've done, as much as I think that they've done some great things in the draft, um, they're still a very young team. That's the same problem with the Houston Rockets at this current moment, and even a little bit with the Orlando Magic, even though they're more competitive. It's just, this is not a young man's league. This is a, you need to be in your prime kind of grown man's league type of situation,
Yeah.
um, where you have to compete. Like in order to compete, you got to be at least in your mid 20s, and these are all young guys, with Bogdanovich being the old head. Uh, so
Yeah, this team is man, I would say one of the most tragically miscoached in just they just don't ever put the right coach in the situation they need to at the right time, right?
yeah,
Like I think if you look at like Memphis is a great example, Cleveland is another good example. Going back to them, like Taylor Jenkins and JB Bickerstaff, guys like Nick Nurse was even more perfect timing just in that situation in Toronto. But using JB Bickerstaff and Taylor Jenkins as the example, I mean, those dudes they were young coaches with a lot of promise in terms of developing as coaches, because
yeah,
that's one thing I don't think a lot of people talk about. Like in the NBA, there is a level of coaching development that needs to happen too. Like coaches grow and get better as their time in the NBA goes on, and
yeah,
you see that with a lot of guys. You That's why Detroit is so frustrating. You have I think Stan Van Gundy is just awful, just an awful coach. I mean, he tanked them his final year of being the GM and coach. Beyond even just him, Dwayne Casey, not a bad coach. He won Coach of the year he got fired by Toronto, and then he
yeah,
went to Detroit. But again, that is that's not necessarily the timeline that these guys were on. And I know that Dwayne Casey had showed some promise with developing guys in Toronto, like he had DeRozan and Lowry and other dudes too, Pascal
yeah,
Siakam for a bit. But that's just not necessarily him as a coach. That's not really what he's known for. But also, he's
yeah,
not growing as a coach. He's an older guy. He uses the same schemes and systems that he always has. He's just not the guy that's going to grow with your players and end up being a great coach when they're great players. So they need to just move off of him and get somebody that can grow with the team a little bit and let
yeah,
these young dudes run. Because as much as Bojan Bogdanovic has been good, he's been great. But you just can't have him out there when you have young dudes that are sitting on
yeah.
the bench. And even then, I don't know, man. There's just not a lot of long-term planning, I think, in Detroit. And that is kind of a bummer because they have guys that in the long term
Yeah,
have crazy
exactly.
upside. crazy upside.
Exactly.
So move off of that, get somebody that is going to grow a little bit. And yeah, man, they're a tough one because this really does feel like a lost year. I would usually push back and say that at this point in your career, if you're Ivy, what even is a lost year, especially if you're getting a ton of minutes on the court? That's probably all you could ask for.
Yeah.
Um, but it is a lost year. It still feels like that for some reason, just because the expectations were a little bit higher in terms of where they were heading. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, they gotta do something big,
Yeah.
especially off of what seemed like a really good off season. It just doesn't feel like
Mhm.
that anymore, which is a bummer. What was the other team you wanted to talk about real quick?
Um, let's
We
save
could
them
just
for
save it.
yeah, let's
Let's do
save
it.
it for another time. I mean, I think that was kind of a perfect thing to end on in terms of just disappointment, not really maybe not disappointment, but just a team that we thought would excel a little bit better, obviously not meeting up to our expectations of what they should be this year. But I do think at the end of the day, the young guys, this is great experience for them to get on the court and you know, I think it also kind of tells you like guys like Killian Hayes, I think this is their last hurrah for this team, and I think they're ready to move on from some of these guys and just kind of become a team that needs to start tanking for Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson, whoever they feel like. Well, maybe not Scoot, but maybe one of the twins um, or other players as well, and just kind of figure out what they
Yeah,
need.
Scoot. This is probably the only bad team that wouldn't want Scoot.
Yeah, they already got a Scoot like player in Ivy. They really just
I mean,
need
Scoot's
someone
better
that
than
can
him, but
yeah, they need someone that can extend and things like that. So,
sure.
let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of the Detroit Pistons? Have they been a disappointment or are they where you think they should be? Let us know in the comment section down below. Well, guys, that's gonna do it here for us at the Charge. I want to thank Pete again for hopping on and talking some great basketball knowledge. So
Thank you for
appreciate you,
having me.
Pete.
Always, I appreciate it. Always
Um,
love it.
Yeah, and we're obviously going to continue to put out segments clipped out so you guys can view your favorite segment. Think about like what was your favorite thing to talk about. So again, we talked about a lot of different things. Miles Turner being one of them, Giannis and the Evan Mobley story, and a lot of other stories. So let us know what your guys' favorite story was in the comments section down below. And obviously, we'll continue to add more stuff. And we're continuing to talk behind the scenes about how to improve the channel, and we're looking forward to doing that for you guys, and continuing this to be something where eventually we would love to make money on this channel, just so we can grow and give you guys a lot more than just talking like this. As much as I love talking like this, I think there's a lot more we can add for you guys.
Hmm.
Maybe some NBA 2K content and other content that I would like to personally add. Obviously, with time being the biggest crunch for all of us. But we appreciate your guys' love and support, and we'll tune in next week. Like I said, hit that like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode of The Charge. Peace out, everybody.